The wind howled across Bodmin Moor, carrying with it the sharp scent of peat and damp earth. The moor was a vast, lonely expanse, stretching endlessly beneath a gray sky that never seemed to break. Travelers often said that Bodmin Moor felt different, as though the ground itself was alive, watching, waiting. Locals told stories of coarse whispers of a shadow that stalked the heather and stone. Something too fast to be a man, too cunning to be an animal. They called it the Beast of Bodmin Moor. To most outsiders, it was nothing more than a legend to scare children and tourists. But for those who lived nearby, who heard the cries in the night, it was real. Dead livestock, slashed fences, and strange footprints left behind in the mud told them so. The story begins with Mark and Sarah Turner, a young couple who had just moved from London to a small stone cottage at the edge of the moor. They wanted peace, a break from the noise of the city. Sarah loved to paint, and she thought the misty landscape would inspire her. Mark, a writer, craved solitude for his work. At first, everything felt like a dream. They spent their mornings drinking tea by the fire, and their evenings walking the old paths that cut through the wilderness. But within weeks, Sarah began to notice strange things. At night, when the fire burned low, she would hear scratching at the windows. Not the sharp tap of a tree branch or the brush of wind, but claws dragging slowly across the glass. Mark would laugh it off, blaming foxes or badgers, but Sarah wasn't convinced. One night, returning from the village pub, they found the gate to their garden torn off its hinges. The wood wasn't rotted, nor was it broken by a storm. It had been ripped clean, as if something with immense strength had wrenched it away. Sarah wanted to call the local authorities, but Mark dismissed it, chalking it up to local kids or drunks. Still, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept dreaming of yellow eyes glowing in the dark, following her through the mist. A week later, Sarah went out to the moor to paint. The day was cold, with low fog clinging to the ground. She set up her easel near an old stone circle and began to sketch. But as she worked, she felt it again, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. She turned quickly, scanning the moor, but saw nothing, just the endless stretch of heather and rock. Then she noticed the silence. The birds had stopped singing. Not even the wind stirred. It was as though the world itself had frozen, holding its breath. And then, through the mist, she saw it. At first it looked like a shadow, too large to be real, low to the ground and moving with unnatural speed. It darted between the stones, its body sleek but massive, its shoulders rolling like a predator's. Sarah dropped her brush. She wanted to scream, but her voice caught in her throat. She backed slowly toward her cottage, never turning her eyes away from the shifting figure. But when she blinked, it was gone. That night, she told Mark everything. He tried to hide his worry, but Sarah could see it in his face. He believed her more than he wanted to admit. To calm her, he suggested they both go out to the moor the next night, together, to prove there was nothing there. Against her better judgment, she agreed. They left at dusk, lanterns in hand, following the winding path that cut through the mist. The air was colder than usual, their breaths forming pale clouds. Hours passed with no sign of anything unusual. But then, as the lantern light flickered, Mark froze. Ahead of them, just beyond the glow, stood two eyes yellow, unblinking, fixed on them. The beast stepped forward, silent as death, its body larger than any animal Mark had ever seen. It looked like a panther, but twisted, its legs too long, its head too broad, its teeth glinting as it bared them. The couple ran. Behind them, the beast gave chase, its claws tearing into the earth, closing the distance with terrifying speed. They reached the cottage and slammed the door shut just as the creature hit the wall, shaking the stones with its weight. The sound of claws raked across the wood, a guttural growl vibrating through the air. Then silence. When Mark dared to look through the window, there was nothing there but the fog. The days that followed were worse. They began to hear it every night, the pacing outside, the growls carried on the wind, the thud of something heavy circling their home. Mark tried to call the police, but the line was dead. The next morning, they discovered the wires had been cut, cleanly severed. Someone or something did not want them calling for help. Sarah began to change. She stopped painting, stopped eating. Her eyes were always drawn to the moor, as if the beast had left a part of itself inside her mind. Mark grew desperate. He visited the village and asked about the Beast of Bodmin Moor. Most dismissed him, but one old farmer took him aside. The man whispered of ancient stories, of a creature born of blood sacrifice long ago, when villagers offered lives to the moor in exchange for protection. The beast is no animal, the farmer said. It is the moor itself, hungry, wearing flesh to hunt. Mark returned home shaken, only to find the door of the cottage ajar. Inside, Sarah was gone. Her easel was overturned, her brushes scattered, and across the canvas she had been working on was a painting of the beast, its yellow eyes staring from the fog. He ran to the moor, shouting her name, but only the mist answered. Then from the fog, he heard her voice, soft at first, calling him closer. He followed, lantern trembling in his hand. The voice grew louder, more urgent, but something was wrong. The words were broken, twisted, as if forced from a throat that wasn't human. When he finally saw her, standing among the stones, his blood froze. Her eyes glowed yellow in the dark, and from the shadows behind her, the beast emerged. The last thing Mark heard was Sarah's whisper, "It is not hunting me anymore, Mark. It's hunting you." That night, the villagers heard screams echoing across the moor, but no one dared to investigate. In the morning, the cottage stood empty, its door torn from its hinges, the ground outside marked with claw prints larger than any human foot. Sarah and Mark Turner were never seen again. Some say they became part of the legend, swallowed by the beast. Others whisper that the moor demands blood, and once it takes you, it never lets you go. And so, to this day, if you walk Bodmin Moor when the mist is low and the wind dies, you might hear scratching at the stone, a growl carried on the breeze, or worse, a voice, calling you deeper into the fog.